Hey, 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 welcome to a very special Purple Acorn 2025 prediction show. I'm your host, Serge Boudreau, also known as the HR Weatherman on the very popular HR Morning Show. We have a powerhouse of panels. We have thought leaders, we have HR futurists, and I'm excited to peer into their crystal ball to give us what's next for the world of work and what we should expect for 2025 for HR. The stakes are high here because I plan to go back at the end of 2025 and look at all our experts' prediction and call them out if they're right or wrong. So reputations are at stake here. So, for anyone listening, I think one of the reason that we wanted to do this is having experts that are dealing with this on a daily basis can give you some insights on what you should expect in 2025. Let's go right to our guest, and we have an all star lineup. Who do I have first? Who's my first panelist?
Oh,
Oh, there is no one better than Allyn Bailey. Allyn Bailey is also on the HR Morning Show and hosts the Global Report. And she does something at Smart Recruiters. I'm not 100% sure, but how about
neither
you
am
tell
I.
us?
The job changes all the time. Yeah, no, I do market stuff. I'm out there talking about what we're doing as a company, and I get to have great conversations like this. That's what I do full time. Just chat.
Love it. I can't wait to hear your predictions. I did say before the show that I think you're going to have a prediction because we were following Winston and he obviously appeared, but I think there's friends out there in the New Jersey area circling around in drones.
It's
You might be able to
it's
tell us something about
possible.
that.
It's possible. I cannot either deny or confirm the existence of Winston's friends.
So are you ready? Do you have your predictions ready?
I do. I have my predictions ready. You know I
Okay.
do.
I know you do. So, and I know they're going to be great. And when I said HR futurists, that's who you are. So I'm looking forward to your predictions.
I'm looking forward to making some. We'll see if they actually are any good. We'll figure that
Let's
out later.
see. Let's
Yeah.
see. All right, let's jump to who's next. Oh, Rhona Pierce, the co-host on my second favorite Purple Acorn show, The Elder Hour. Rhona, welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
So, are you nervous about predicting what 2025 is going to bring?
I'm very competitive. I love to win. So I'm very nervous about not being right, but I'm hardly ever wrong. So who knows?
Rhona, tell us a little bit more. Obviously, you're in the Elder Hour, but what else do you do?
So I have a podcast. It's called Throughout the Playbook. It's all about modern ways of recruiting. I always say 1980 is a long time ago, and most of the people talking about how to recruit are talking about how it used to be done. Well, the people on my podcast, we talk about how it's done now and how we think it's going to be done in the future. So there's a lot of predictions going on in my podcast.
So 1980 is not that long ago because that's actually the year I was born. So
Me
let's not
too.
go
So
too deep there. Perfect, Rhona. I'm looking forward to your prediction. Who's next on the panel? Oh,
Hey, how you doing?
the host of the Elder Hour and also Recruiting Future, probably my favorite podcast of all time in this space, Matt Alder. Matt, it's a pleasure to have you on here.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm sadly can remember 1980 as well. I was very young, obviously, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, predictions. I'm kind of breaking my own rule about making predictions because I think that our industry needs to be much more savvy about how it plans and predicts for the future, and there should be strategy and methodology and all those kind of things. So, but for now, that's all going out the window, and I'm happy to stick my neck out and make some predictions about next year or this
What a
year, depending on when
rational
you're watching this.
take. A very boring one. So I'm glad that we're.
Exactly.
How fun would it be if we can't predict and we're wrong? So, Matt, obviously, you are very knowledgeable in this space. So I'm excited to hear what your predictions will be.
I'm excited to make them, I think.
All right. Who's next? Oh, we have a legend, Sarah White of Aspect 43, and actually is going to be appearing on our show From the Desk with Jada Montemarano. Sarah,
Yes.
welcome. Pleasure to meet you. I think we've met a couple of times, but it's great to be on screen with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will be approaching it from a data perspective. So we run the largest buyer behavior study in the world around HR tech and TA tech, and including indexing 75 categories for market movement and buyer behavior. We can predict up to 3 years out what products are going to be bought and sold. And so my challenge with predictions is respecting all of my NDAs around what I know is coming on roadmaps.
You have an unfair advantage there, Sarah. So I'll make sure I try to pick categories that you might not be as familiar. I'm kidding.
It won't
This
happen.
is, I think it's going to be great.
I'm
Perfect.
excited. Yes. Good to see everybody.
It's great. This is a panel of legends, so I'm ecstatic of hosting this. So let me give you a little bit of an idea of how this is going to roll. We're actually going to have a spinning wheel. What would be a Purple Acorn show without some cool graphics? And it's going to have all these different components of HR and the world of work. And when it lands on one, I'm going to look at you. I'm going to go to you and ask for your predictions. Then we can talk about it a little bit. And at the end, I'm going to ask everyone a general prediction that I will hold you accountable to eventually. Maybe not, but let's say we are. So how about we jump into the wheel first? This was
Are you?
done on purpose.
I
This was
see.
done on
Because
purpose.
usually I'm the one that disagrees with Serge, so he decided to skip over me. Very,
That is actually
very sly,
hilarious
Serge.
because Danielle disagrees with everything I say on the HR morning show.
But I have the power, Serge. That's what you
You
need to
do
realize.
have the power. So the dynamic has changed today. So actually, Danielle Farage is the co-host of the HR morning show. And is something like, what are you, like a Gen Z strategist? Like, what's your title? What do you do, Danielle?
Yeah, I'm a public speaker. I talk about Gen Z in the workplace. And I also, this year, have been getting into workshop facilitation, helping companies design young professional learning and development programming. I'm also a B2B marketer in the HR tech industry and a content creator as well. So I do many, many things, Serge, but disagreeing with you is at the top of the list.
I know you do many things. I just don't know if you do them right. So I guess we'll figure it out this show. But
Oh,
that is absolutely hilarious that I forgot you, Danielle. So I guess I'll be picking you first. But thank you for joining us. Actually, it's great to be on this side where I'm holding the power, Danielle. I love it.
that's what you think.
Danielle, I'm going to have to tell you, so early, first out of college, I actually did Gen Y speaking. My first blog around HR in
Love it.
2000 was called Gen Wide because I was the one Gen Y person. And then you know what they did? They removed Gen Y and they started calling it millennials. And then they started changing the ages of us over and over and over. And so now I'm stuck in Zennial land.
Oh,
Not a Gen
same.
Xer, way more on a millennial side. Sometimes we're called elder millennials, but so hopefully they don't like rip Gen Z out 4 years into your branding and then just be like, never mind, we're going to call it something
That's
else.
funny. Yeah, no, it's interesting because we're also twinning. We're both
Yes,
wearing the green
Oh, I
sweaters.
I
see.
So
saw.
I feel like I'm looking at myself in a couple of years. It's pretty
I was
wild.
like, maybe I should go change. Yeah, no, this is your future in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't mind. You seem really smart and like you have it together. So, sign me up.
I would agree with that.
Productive in the
Fantastic
regular
role model. So now we have everyone. We haven't forgotten anyone. Producers, we've got everyone nailed down. All right, let's jump into the wheel and let's Global hiring. And you know what? I'm looking at you, Allyn. I would love you to take this one. I think this is just right in your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I do. I have a prediction on this one. I think it's some early trending that we saw towards the end of this last 2024. As we go into 2025, I think the conversation is going to be around the democratization of hiring. And here's what I mean by that. Listen, technology has caught up with all of our dreams and desires. The capabilities are now possible. More and more companies are going to start trying to figure out how to leverage that more effectively. And what part of that is going to mean is that they're going to change the conversation from efficiency and speed to redesign and reimagining. And when they do that, it's going to translate itself into different types of people being involved in the hiring process, right? Maybe you don't need a recruiter Sherpa, but maybe you need something else or someone else in some type of different type of role. Maybe you need more prompt engineering and less sourcing. I don't know. But I think that's going to be the conversation, the democratization of hiring. Who can do it, when they can do it, how they can do it.
In every market across the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I personally think we are past the days of having very discrete market variations and differences. I think that you will see it happen faster in some places than others. You hear me talk a lot, you're going to hear me talk a lot about peacocks and whispers. I think that some of it will be loud and proud and out there and in your face, and some of it will be whispers and conversations happening in back rooms. But nonetheless, it's going to be happening.
Really interesting. Matt, would love your take. Do you agree? Do you think, or do you have a different prediction when it comes to global hiring?
I maybe have a slightly different angle. I think I actually agree with what Allyn said there. I think that there's obviously two different ways you can look at this. You can look at, global hiring, companies based in different parts of the, companies with offices all over the world, how their hiring process is working, what do they do? I'm interested in the kind of the global talent aspect of this. In the past, companies have kind of looked beyond their shores, very often for price reasons. So it's cheaper to move these roles to this particular country. Where I think we're going is skills and talent. So actually, because everything is much more open, because the technology's there, it's like, where in the world can I find these skills? And not necessarily being about just being about cost anymore. So I think maybe a kind of a shifting in philosophy about moving jobs to different parts of the world.
And from a hiring, if we move away from the hiring part of this, the technology is finally available where we can hire a little bit more fluidly globally. And so we have way better access to EOR technology. We have a better access to being able to have connectivity. And so the operationalization of hiring, workforce management, workforce planning at a global scale is going to be able to support what we're going to be able to do on the recruiting side in a way that technically we weren't going to be able to do even 5 years ago.
Do you think with a certain election in the US and obviously a more nationalist trend in the US that this is going to affect anything when it comes to global hiring?
No, not at all. I think there's more media conversation about all of this than actual business conversation about this.
It's an unstoppable force. The genie is out of the bottle. The technology is there. People can do all kinds of things remotely. Language is not necessarily a barrier anymore. I don't think you can roll that back, however much you'd like to or try to.
Well, and I think even with that, I think because of the introduction of all of the AI tech and tools, it isn't even necessarily cheaper to go international anymore. In a lot of markets, you just need to have somebody really good at what you were talking about a little bit earlier, like knowing how to do the AI integration a little bit better. And so one person can do the job of 5, 6, 7, 8. So even if somebody can't go totally global, they can access just different points for contract or for this versus true global hiring. But the introduction of AI is about to completely change everything. And we're seeing, if everybody, a lot of you guys I know are on TikTok also, but like I can watch these people build agencies, all of these other groups, and they're hitting 10, 20, $50,000 a month within 4 months using AI by themselves, working a full-time job. And so the speed and the time is no longer the challenge and need to go, because we're looking at things from an hourly perspective to go global.
Danielle, I'm curious on your take here.
My take, I think that we're going to continue to see the growth of gig work marketplaces, things like Upwork, Fiverr. There's one called A Team where they basically create like smaller teams to take on bigger projects. But yeah, they're going to continue to thrive and expand due to what Sarah was talking about, right? Ease of use and adoption, and also due to like the rapid evolution of AI and the need for innovation, as well as like the flattening and democratization of organizations. I think there's like a need to innovate because things are changing so fast.
Yep.
So I actually have seen the creation of internal talent marketplaces for like gig work. And so I think that there's more project-based working. I've already seen that show up for a few different companies I've spoken to, but that will only expand in the immediate future. And I think a lot of people are also focused on that skills-based hiring, but also upskilling. And so that's super interesting to younger generations as well, because they're just focused on how do I gain the most skills as possible to help me throughout this crazy change.
We started road mapping that tech, just so you know, in 2016 is when we've been road mapping and building those internal marketplaces for talent. It's taken this long for companies to be able to be ready to adopt what has been in the works from a lot of the vendors. And so I'm sure everybody on here has had some of the challenges with that internal side of things. So I know it's horrible to say, but COVID really helped progress a lot of this a lot faster than we anticipated.
Yeah. I think too, Sarah, do you think that, I'm sorry, I'm piping in here. Sarah, do you think some of that ability to kind of enhance and really start activating some of those early marketplaces that we started talking about in 2016, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the AI tech has now evolved to a point where we can actually start to look at more dynamically, right? And move out of kind of those static hierarchies and start to be a little bit more dynamic about skills and even job description, like what work needs to be done and how do I connect people to it, and et cetera. It's a good example of where we had great ideas, but until the tech caught up with the capabilities to execute to it, we haven't been able to see it really come to fruition. And I think we're there now.
Yeah, the adoption was so hard because you had to build all of the taxonomies and all of the different levels in order to do it. Most companies were not going to be able to do it. But I think there was also just a little bit of hesitancy from employees. So getting away from HR at the employee level, we still had a lot of hesitancy as we were running focus groups around people thinking about their job as a project. And I think skills is actually also going to be something we slow down talking about in 2025, and we start moving around, I don't want to say task, but start moving around like functions and different, a little bit different than skills, but like almost like little mini specialties or like little projects that people are really good at, and being able to verse in and think about how we can plug and play. There's some, I can't go into further, but there are some really, really amazing things about to hit 2025 that aligns with all of this, that is going to actually like really change how we think about all of this at work.
Yeah, so cool.
What a teaser, Sarah. That's pretty cool. But in the sake of keeping this moving along, I love to spin the wheel first. And Rhona, I'm going to ask you. So be ready with whatever the wheel comes up with. So let's spin the wheel. For it. So Rhona, how about you jump in? We have Allyn on record, so let's put you on record here.
I mean, I've always been team quality over quantity when it comes to hiring. And I think that's just how we're moving towards. We've seen how companies have downsized, and how just the market has changed. So definitely, I do see a lot of more focus, and just like everyone was saying with skills and everything, but a lot more focus on having the right amount of people, and then people who know how to use the tools that can help them output the amount of work that's needed.
I love it. I love it. I'm curious, in the world of AI lazy apply bots, AI assisted applies, less recruiters, definitely an employer market. This has been the story in 2024 about just the overabundance of candidates that some companies are getting. I'm curious, I'll jump to you, Danielle. Do you think, what's your thoughts on quality versus quantity hiring in 2025?
Well, from the candidate side, I'm going to speak from that perspective.
Yeah, please.
I think it's never been worse. I think the candidate experience will need to change. I think there's a lack of trust, a loss of trust. And I think that the companies that are able to recognize and recognize the importance of that candidate experience and proactively address it, I'm talking about actually providing value to the people who are applying to jobs, not just getting back to them. That's like the bare minimum, which most of them don't. But providing value and creating community around applying to jobs. Um, I think those are the companies that are going to win out in terms of the talent marketplace. Because if you think about the like any resource that that helped you in a tough time, like there is a specific level of loyalty that you have to those organizations that help you during a tough time. And I think there's a unique opportunity right now for organizations to capitalize on that it is a really tough moment for people looking at for jobs, and those organizations, even if they aren't going to hire you today, might hire you later. It might look like upskilling, and might look like community events and IRL events. But I think that that's something that is a prediction of mine. Companies are going to start to talk to their candidates more.
Is any of the other elders on this call having a flashback to 2006?
I so am, Sarah.
I
Yeah.
could pull out my decks of what we were presenting at conferences in 2006, 2007, and use them almost word for word with very little modification. In fact, it was almost 20 years ago that we founded the Candidate Experience Awards. I was part of the original Candidate Bill of Rights. I think that was 2006, 2007 we published that. I was part of the original Candidate Experience Board. And so it has been nearly 20 years. This has been an ongoing problem. The challenge isn't that there hasn't been a focus. The challenge is that the consumer side of things has been moving so much more rapidly than what the organizations were able to do. And one of the really amazing things, coming back to the quality, is when we are talking to executives, the shift around marketing and around sales is also no longer about getting the most volume. It isn't about having the highest number of followers. It isn't about having the most number of people at your webinar. It isn't about those type of things at all. It's about having the right people. We did a spot check, for instance, of a company that was having huge numbers across the board on all of their webinars and all this type of stuff, but their revenue and their sales were going down in the space. Well, only 17% of those people were buyers. And so it didn't make any sense for them. And we're seeing at the non-HR level a shift around quality versus quantity. And we often will see that trickle in and give a little bit more validity. So when HR and recruiting comes and says that, it isn't just HR and recruiting being seen like they are just like not wanting to work or like whatever, right? Whatever excuses were previously made up. But the candidate experience stuff, we have this exact same conversation every 8 years, like clockwork. We had the same thing. So 2005 to 2008, we did the exact same thing. 2013 to 2016, we're doing the same thing now. And then every opposite for years. We go the other way about how do we source better? What do we do? How do we change the dynamics? And this has been going on since I entered the market in 1997.
Can I add something on just some thoughts on quality, because
Yes.
quality, it's a kind of a no-brainer, really.
No-brainer.
And the technology and the targeting and the insights and the data, within things like recruitment marketing is actually there to deliver this. The problem is having a consistent metric that measures quality.
Yes.
You've got data fragmentation, you've got subjectivity. Vendors are interested in quality of application. Employers are interested in post-hire metrics. It's a crazy space. So it's actually quite difficult to, benchmark quality. So if I'm going to make a prediction, I would say that actually next year, perhaps we'll make some progress on that. As AI joins up data and systems, and maybe we'll get to a point where we have something that's a little bit more universal around quality. There's a big prediction. Can't believe I said that.
That
anyway,
is a big prediction.
We'll see what happens.
That's a very generous prediction.
I'm curious, Allyn, what's your take? What is a quality candidate in your mind?
It's not where I thought you were going to go. The quality candidate is the right candidate at the right time, do the right thing I need done right at that moment. Honestly, right?
Can I quote that? Can I use that in the future? You just nailed it.
Go for it. Go for it. I mean, I'm going to add something a little controversial, maybe not controversial to this topic. I think quality versus quantity is a misnomer, especially as we go forward. We just had a conversation about the fact that we have a better understanding of the dynamic motion of jobs, the dynamic motion of skills, and the fact that we're going to start seeing hiring happening in much more kind of untraditional ways, right? Whether it be freelancing, fractional, project-based teams, in and out, et cetera. What I think we're going to start seeing is both things happening simultaneously. To get to quality, I'm going to change and reframe my quantity. So what that means is I may be hiring more people for more types of things, but for less time for more specific outputs in a much more targeted way. So quality and quantity start coming together by fixing right people, right time, right moment, right length, right duration, right experience. And that's how we solve candidate experience, which we haven't solved.
I love it. I love it. We need to move on to the next wheel.
Just that topic, though, by the way.
Yeah, we could.
We could go on the whole. I completely agree, and it's something we should do a show about, because it's something that's really, it is, in my opinion, the conversation in talent acquisition right now, or the most critical one. But sake of time, let's get to the wheel and let's see what's next. Jumping at this one. I'm actually Sarah, can you take this one? Do you want to jump on this one?
This is a passion project for me. I started working on how we can integrate mental health into work just in general. Probably about 8 years ago, as I was going through some grief and some trauma recovery, and I realized there was just not resourcing available in companies. And nothing was really available. And the more we researched, the more we started realizing mental health was becoming an issue. And as we were getting ready to publish, COVID hit. And that completely changed and expanded the dynamic around how we researched and talked about mental health at work. It has, since 2021, has been one of the fastest growing areas of technology purchasing in the HR tech space. And one of the biggest initiatives led from the executive team to HR versus HR to the executives. And so we're seeing a very big shift of conversations around mental health at work. And that is only going to continue, but it's going to go beyond kind of the 2016, 2017 conversations of do meditation apps, and really coming into getting into how we are hiring. Why are we treating people so poorly from our first touch points? And we're going to change into much more consumer flows of relationships for that candidate. and it's going to carry into how we onboard, how we treat them as employees, the level of respect, the options and the opportunities. And this all ties into everything that we have talked about. As an employee, if my mental health is respected and I could bounce between teams, I can flex up and down with my work schedule, the whole concept of full-time, part-time, flex time should disappear. And really, what does this mean, and how in the US especially, this is going to tie back to a lot of the healthcare conversations and how benefits are applied and how we are managing compensation and total comp and benefit packages. And I think this is going to be one of the areas, we're not going to solve it this year, but 2025, mental health at work and the broader scope of all of the technology and kind of just the employee and candidate decisions is going to be one of the biggest shifts that we will actually experience and see as an employee if we are one of the employees lucky enough to keep our jobs.
There you go. 2025, huge focus on mental health overall. I'm curious, Rhona, what's your take on this?
I think millennials started it, and Gen Z has really normalized the conversation about mental health and how important it is to you. Plus, everything that has happened in the world, it really has opened up everyone's eyes to it. And we're at a point where companies absolutely cannot ignore it. I agree with everything Sarah was saying. Like, we're at a point where maybe we won't solve it next year, but it's definitely a conversation that's needs to happen. It's going to be had. And just thinking back, 2023 was the last time I was recruiting actively, 2022, 2023, and candidates were already asking about how the company went about supporting mental health and stuff like that. Normal conversations during interviews, things that looking back to when I got into the job force 1999, I would never ask that. I was like, no, you don't ask about these things, but now it's normal.
Interesting. I'm curious, Danielle, outside of HR, do you think any hiring managers, business leaders even care about any type of mental health initiatives?
Oh, yeah. I think there's a huge uptick in interest and awareness around mental health. I think that, like Rona said, Gen Z is normalizing the conversation. And I think that's a really great thing, not just for Gen Z, but for everyone. And that's partially why I do what I do, because a lot of the things that Gen Z advocates for, like mental health, are actually things that everyone needs, right? We all
Hmm.
need to focus more on ourselves and our mental health, not to say, oh, let's be narcissists, but really like, let's tune into how we're doing. Because that way we can be more conscious leaders. We could be more empathetic. We could treat each other better. And maybe there'd be less conflict to get in the way of efficiency. And I do think, one of my predictions that I'm going to be dropping in my newsletter this Friday is that trauma is not taboo anymore. And I
Yep.
think that's kind of the next level of the mental health conversation. We've thus far been kind of general about mental health and talking about that. I think that like over the past few years, I've seen, new benefits like, grief support and grief counseling be on the rise. I think we're going to see more of that and more specifically, targeted and personalized mental health interventions, which I'm excited for.
And I'll just point out, like, it was last year, HR Tech gave us speaking space to come in and talk about mental health at work, wellness at work, trauma at work, and what this looks like and the shift and the impact it's actually having on companies. And so when we start having some of the larger events come in and start normalizing this in a way where we're not talking about it in a very like, oh, get a mindfulness app. Oh, worry about burnout. But really like, hey, we have all of these type of things that we're not talking about the impact of menopause, the impact of domestic violence, the impact of grief, the impact of trauma, the impact of the fact that how many of our young new hires have lived through mass shootings. It's actually pretty high, right? And so you've got this a very different perspective of how this is all coming in. Our research is showing that in 2024, 27% of companies were actively buying mental health technology to help support their workers, and another 47% were starting to research it.
Hmm.
And so our buyer behavior research for 2025 is running January, February. So we'll have all of those new numbers coming out end of Q1. But this has been ongoing at the non-HR decision maker level, one of the fastest areas of focus across the board. So they absolutely care about this.
Can I just connect to something that Danielle said earlier? And that's about the candidate experience. So candidate experience is in crisis. More people are going to be looking for jobs. What about the mental health of people looking for jobs? And, my prediction would be that next year, does that start to get pinned on companies? It's kind of like, are companies going to be put under pressure to communicate better, to do recruiting better because of the mental health cost of job seekers? Will that start to be tied back to who is responsible for that? And I kind of predict there might be a debate about that.
It already is on TikTok. I mean, quite honestly, I think we need to figure out a better way to hold accountable all of these resume writers and career coaches that have absolutely no business doing what they're doing and are just flat out lying and creating so much mental trauma around job seekers and taking full advantage of these people. But it's already exactly what you're saying. We are watching a swell of this already happening on TikTok.
But there are more placement programs, which, you pay when you land a job, which I like. I'm a fan of that, but the model of give me $20,000 and then I'm gonna help you find a job indefinitely, that I don't think.
I think there's also the trend in HR coach and HR hiring influencers that have no understanding of HR talent acquisition, the process, and they're giving faulty information that are leading candidates astray. But so what I'm hearing, 2025, a big year for mental health in the workplace, but also with tech, mental health initiatives in the tech space to help out these companies. Very interesting stuff. I think we have to jump into the next spin of the wheel because I'm curious what's next.
Oof.
All right. I have a lot to say on this one, so I'm really curious what the opinion of the group and what the prediction is going to be. But Danielle, what's your prediction? How big is pay transparency in 2025? Do we see a rollback or it's road ahead?
Well, I will say it's a spicy topic. Obviously, we saw the pay transparency law passed last year. I don't know on the law side. I don't know, so I'm going to have to refer to another of the panelists for that part. But I will say pay transparency is very much something that Gen Z supports, especially because many Gen Zers cannot afford to live on their current salary. Many Gen Zers have to either have a side hustle to support their income or live at home. Honestly, the number is, it just ranges so much, but it could be anywhere between 30 to 75% of Gen Z still lives at home. It's a crazy number. Obviously, a lot of those people are, still in college, but a good number of them, are approaching 30. So that's a huge part of it. And I think that pay transparency, I just posted a video on TikTok asking my fellow Gen Zers, what do you want from your employers in 2025? Every single comment was about more money, being able to live on my wage. That's going to be a huge one.
Danielle, one of the things that kind of goes with that is also a recent survey that said that to be financially successful as a Gen Z, it was over 500,000 that you have to make a year. And interesting, I was just following someone at the YMCA, young guy coming out. He's like, oh, I think I'm going to get this new job. And his friend said, how much? He's like, well, it's got to pay at least $150K to start. And this was basically working as a laborer. So do you think there's something there as far as the expectations of Gen Z and what the salary requirements are going, or salary expectations coming out of college?
100%. I mean, not only is cost of living higher, but you also have social media, which standardizes a lot of norms, in that many, and I heard Scott Galloway talk about this literally yesterday. In a clip of his, he was like, it used to be that people used to strive for the 10%, right? 10% of people used to strive to be 10% or 1%. Most
Yeah.
Gen Zers you talk to strive to be in that 1%.
Mhm.
And to be in that 1%, you have to work really, really, really hard, and you have to give up a lot. And I don't necessarily think that most Gen Zers know what it takes to be in that 1%. I probably don't even know what it takes to be in that 1%. But to be
Yeah.
honest, I think that that skews a lot of that, that data from that report, which I did a number of posts about. And you can go to that post and kind of hear my perspective on the whole thing, because it's a lot expanded. But yeah, I think that there's a greater expectation amongst Gen Z to earn more, just
Yeah.
simply just the cost of living alone, right?
So your
From
prediction is definitely we're going to see an increase in the expectations of pay transparency. Obviously, there's laws in different states, and you see it expanding
Yeah,
potentially.
and at the same time, employers are trying to, cut back their starting salaries for young professionals, and the two could not be more far apart right now.
So, Aline, what's your thoughts here? Because obviously, there's a difference in the employer and employee market. We're definitely in an employer market, so we're going to see
Mhm.
downward pressure on salaries, starting wages, internships. What's your take here?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think we are at this very interesting point in time where there is a rising expectation that I'm going to have transparency and clarity, and I'm not going to invest in you unless you show me what you want to invest in me. Going side by side with a really tough job market, you have people who are not used to having to look this hard and this long for a job,
Right.
and that really puts them in a position to maybe be willing to bend in places they would not have bent before. So I think here's what I think this ends up parlaying itself into. If we take into account the fact that we're going to see more and more both companies and the likelihood that individuals are being more willing to accept more gig based, part time, flexible sorts of employment opportunities, all of those require much more transparency and clarity on how much you're going to pay me. Now you're paying me by output, right? I mean, I'm sure Sarah can talk about this all day long. We're even seeing this in the B2B market, right? The move is much more, don't just give me this generic amount, tell me this amount for this value, very specific thing I'm providing for you.
Yeah.
And that's going to make pay transparency become just a normal thing because it's much more related to a very specific task, and it's going to be much more discreet in terms of the kind of how big it is, right? So I'm not talking about a salary, I'm talking about a project cost.
We have employment lawyers on our team, and so this is something we watch really closely. In the US, at least, the legislation is only going to continue to go. And it is not just Gen Z, right? Like financially, millennials are struggling, especially if they didn't buy a house. The difference right now isn't by age. The difference is, did you buy a house before 2020 or not? Because that seems to be the big gap. Or did you buy it 2021, 2022 when rates were still low? Or are you not? Because the difference in a house, the exact same house, the exact same neighborhood, might be a difference of $3,000 to $5,000 a month. And so, regardless of your age, if you got in or didn't get in the housing market, that I think is the biggest factor of the division, not actually age at all.
Hmm. So let's say pay transparency is going to become even more prominent in 2025, and I think we're going to see it expand. Let's spin the wheel one last time. Then I'm going to go to everyone and give me a quick hit on a prediction that I can hold you accountable. So let's spin the wheel.
Veto.
Well,
Yeah, nobody's
Veto.
feeling excited
veto.
about
All right,
that.
let's. Programs. I would love to jump initially to Matt. It's been a little while. How about we jump right to you on this one?
Well, I'd love to make a prediction that's absolutely going to happen. I don't know. It's an interesting time
Yeah.
in terms
Yeah.
of how DNI is now being portrayed and talked about. It does vary from country to country. I think that's the other aspect of it. It's a really big topic, so I'm gonna pick just one small part of it,
Please.
which is neurodiversity. And I'm just gonna say that I hope next year employers will be much more cognizant of how awful the recruiting process is and do something about that. So that's going to be my very sort of specific thing that I'm going to pitch. How awful how awful the process is for people who are neurodiverse, but actually how awful it is for everyone. Because I think if you fix things for neurodiversity, you tend to fix them for everyone. So that's kind of my prediction. So very
I love that prediction, Matt. Rhona, I'm curious what your take on it is.
I think that even though, yes, in the US especially, there's talk about rolling things back and all of this, what we're seeing is that that's really not what most companies are doing. Also, the market is just going to force that's what candidates are asking about. That's what people care about. Even you're seeing it in the consumer, like the non-HR, let's take the looking for a job out of it. Diversity is and DEI is important, and we're going to focus on things of like seeing it in a more holistic way of not just race, not just like male, female type of thing, but like Matt was saying, neurodiversity and all these other things that are part of DEI. I think the DEI practitioners are going to do a better job next year because of all the political pressures. They're going to do a better job at really showcasing what DEI truly is. And that's where we're going to see adoption from some of these companies that have been a little more resistant to it because it is something that impacts everyone.
Very interesting, and I'm going to predict here. I'm actually thinking it's going to go the opposite way because I think a lot of it has been driven. There's factors of it driven by some political pressure, rightly, right? I think it's fully on board, but I think that's going to be removed. And without that cover, a lot of CEOs that have jumped into diversity, equity, inclusion see a way out. So I'm going to predict it's going to be a challenging year, not because it should be. I think it's the wrong way for us to go, but I think we're going to see a lot more examples like Walmart where they're pulling back. Anyone want to disagree with that?
I'm going to fully disagree only because we now have legal legislation. And so what we're actually seeing is we're pulling back from it being a title and one person is in charge of it because what we've realized is that really wasn't the right approach. This is something that needs to happen across everything. How we recruit and manage our talent, how we are selling needs to be different, how managers are leading has to be different, how we are marketing has to be different. It is turning into more of an organizational initiative goal versus it being like, hey, let's make sure we check a box over here. But any public company now, especially, and then any companies that are in Europe, there's very strong laws and reporting that are rolling out in 2025 that it's not possible for them to roll back. They're going to have to be accountable. They're just changing how they're doing it. So one of my big frustrations with it is it has been so performative for the last few years. And we were seeing people spend more money on the marketing of being an inclusive place to work than they were on actually fixing it. And I think what they're changing is we're actually going to fix how we're doing things at work and spend more money on doing it what Allyn said earlier about the quiet, like how do we do it in the quiet ways? We're going to start doing it in the quiet ways because people are tired of the performative versions of all of this.
Can I just give two kind of on the piggyback of what Sarah was saying? I'm going to also add like employer branding specifically. I think in regards to DEI has been problematic because just to slap on, hey, we care about diversity, equity, and inclusion means literally nothing if you're not actually like talking to us about the how and like what that means. I think that there's going to be a shift away from this workplace is for everyone and more towards this is why we're different. And it's giving niche if I were to give that a title. And then the other thing is, I plus one what Matt said about neurodiversity being a topic, but I will also say that I think intergenerational collaboration will also be a topic. That's what I'm hoping for. I think that there will be more intergenerational clashes. A recent LinkedIn study from literally a few days ago found that 1 in 5 Gen Zers haven't had a single conversation with someone over 50 in the workplace in the past year. So if you think, and we're also so, polarized in terms of the types of people we're talking to in our personal lives, I think that there's going to be more of an emphasis on whether it be specifically intergenerational collaboration and fostering that, togetherness, or it be more community centric, finding ways to build internal community. I think, we'll see. But I do think that will be part of, what we'll start to see shift in 2025 and into 2026.
Some really good points, Danielle and Sarah. Really good perspective, especially on the legal side. I think that is going to have an impact, and it's going to remove the performative that we've seen. If you think about just HR tech 2 years ago, everyone had a DE&I sticker, and that was replaced by AI in their boot. So definitely there's going to be a bigger focus. But I also think in the US specifically, and this is a prediction, we're going to see some challenges in 2025 that we might not see in other parts of the world. So really interesting. This is why it's a prediction show. So I want to jump into the next phase, and we're going to do this quickly, right? So I'm going to go to each of you. I want one prediction that is binary that I can come back and say, Danielle, Rhona, you were wrong on this one. So how about I start with Rhona? What's your prediction for 2025 that we can look back on?
We've kind of touched on it. I think that candidates are going to give us a run for our money. They're going to be using AI way more for finding a job, for being at work. And we're going to have to really put our money where our mouth has been as far as DEI. And what does that mean? We're not just going to be able to exclude people because they used or AI or things like that. We're really going to have policies and everything in place. But the main thing, and what I'm excited about, is we're going to have to go back to relationship building and community and really getting to know candidates and employees, because that's the only way that we're really going to know who is a real candidate versus who isn't or who's using AI.
So what can I hold you accountable there? What's the biggest thing and be like?
That candidates are going to force us to go back to basics, relationships, and community because of how they're going to be using AI.
Love it. Love it. Allyn, what's your take? What's your prediction?
My prediction is we are finally going to start replacing the conversation about remote work and hybrid work. That's going to become less and less, and we're going to start talking about autonomy at work. Not just where people work, but how they work, when they work, and that entire frame of having autonomous decision-making in the work framework. So I think it's all autonomy this next year. Remote and hybrid is so 2023.
Oof. I like that one. I like that one. We'll see. Matt, what's your take here?
My prediction is that next year we are going to stop talking about AI. Now, to explain that, because I know it's a big statement, isn't it? It's a big
What a
statement.
hot take.
Right, let me explain it. Because it's becoming ubiquitous, and we have to start talking about the outcomes and the, what it empowers and how we change things, rather than talking about the thing that does that. For those who remember, a few years ago, we used to talk about something called mobile recruiting all the time, or mobile recruiting this, mobile recruiting that. We don't talk about that anymore, because these are just this. It's just there. It's just a thing. So AI is going to be there. It's going to be a thing. We need to talk about, what it does, what it facilitates, and how we're going to change everything, not the thing.
Okay, I'm going to hold you accountable to that one when I end up at HR Tech in October and I see no one talking about AI. I'll know you're right.
It will not be our clients talking about AI, I will tell you that. So.
There you go. Sarah, what's your prediction?
My prediction is we're about to see some pretty big consolidation within the HR tech landscape and within the TA tech landscape. And so we have a lot of products right now. Tech stacks have never been larger. Investments are actually not going down, but all of the vendors you talk to are saying like, oh, we're not selling as much. And it's because everybody has built basically a bunch of features and are releasing features as products. And so we're going to see a pretty big roll up. And we're going to see a lot of the larger vendors that have been quietly doing the large language models and the AI and all of this over the last 10 to 12 years and building it out at scale, finally announcing what they've been doing and really kind of surprising, I think, a lot of people and startups in the space.
Interesting. So obviously, you're very well versed in that space. You mentioned at the start you have NDAs. Is there an acquisition that you can just like say right now?
We have done $1 billion of M&A and investment in the space in the last 4 years. And so there's always stuff moving, but what is coming this year isn't just the big ones that you're going to hear about, but it's a lot of the little products are being acquired even by, instead of having 40 different TA systems, we're going to see kind of the TA vendors buying up some of these little mini point solutions to create more robust TA platforms. And we're seeing the same thing. Talent experience is what we're going to think. I think talent management, employee experience, engagement, and wellness is going to be collapsing into what we're calling talent experience platforms. We are actually doing a big report on this, probably launching in a week. But we're seeing this shift and really this collapse because it's too much for the buyers to try to understand, manage, and it's too much for employees to try to organize and manage all of this tech. Nobody has
that. And from a marketer standpoint, it's too much to sell. Like all of it is important.
No. So, let us market away.
We have a lot of predictions. So let's just end the show. Oh, sorry. We have Danielle. We can't forget about Danielle again.
That was intentional, Serge. That one hurt.
Danielle, did it hurt? What's your take? What's your prediction?
No, not at all, actually. Well, it's a little bit similar on the AI train, but I believe that AI up until this point has just basically sped up what we already could do. I think that in 2025, it will completely transform the way that we do things, and that it will enable us to do more with less, but also new things like being proactive in predicting turnover and churn and helping companies stay ahead of the curve and be more proactive in the employee engagement and talent experience, to use Sarah's words, and which until now has often been overlooked because HR is they just don't have the time to be proactive. They're constantly having to be reactive. And so I think that there's going to be an easier, and hopefully with the consolidation of HR tools, an easier way to prove the value of HR within the organization and impact on the bottom line.
Danielle, brilliant as always. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper on that prediction. I think actually AI hype is going to quiet down in 2025, similar to the internet in the early 2000s, where
Online recruiting.
there's online recruiting. There was such a buzz about the internet, rightfully so. We built a ton of infrastructure, and a lot of companies that build that infrastructure, all the piping and everything, like all the coax, went bankrupt. But thank God they built that infrastructure, because a couple of years after, really, it blew up and it became the world that we have now. But I'm going to give you one prediction that I can be held accountable, and there's going to be no doubt. And this one's a little boring maybe for some of us. But in 2025, we are going to see the biggest job board in the space. So Recruit Holdings, who owns right now Glassdoor and Indeed, is going to acquire Zip Recruiter in 2025. I've been predicting this for 3 years, so I'm just hedging my bet, and it's going to happen this year. So Sarah, if you have any inside information, please share it. But that's my prediction. And the other prediction I'm going to have is hybrid work. I'm not going to go as deep as Allyn. It's dying. We are not going to talk about hybrid. It's not going to go as deep as you say, Allyn. It's going to be you're in the office or you work remotely.
Oh, we'll
Those are
see.
the options.
We'll see.
That's what's going to happen.
No, it's not. It will. People will not live with it. They just won't.
They won't.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see, but I feel they will, because we are in an employer market and people are very desperate for work, and they'll do whatever it takes to get that job. Unfortunately, I'm not saying that's right, but that's what's going to happen. So we will see it 2025 if that happens.
I'm saying, okay, fine. Let's put something good on it. What do you got?
Whatever you need, right? Money, smart recruiter promotion, whatever you want.
I was going to go for like a good.
I see like a brownie or cookie or something.
Maybe a brownie. Yeah, I'm open to everything. But hey, we've been doing this for an hour. We've got some fantastic conversations, some great insights, some predictions that we can hold you accountable to. Some are a little flaky, I must admit, and a little wishy-washy, but then we are HR, and that's what we do in some ways. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. And when we all gather again at the end of 2025, I'm inviting you right now. We're going to see if we were right or not and what actually happened. But I think we're all excited I think 2025 is going to be a banner year for HR and the world of work. I think we're going to see some dynamic shifts. So on that note, I really appreciate each and every one of you for your fantastic insights. And you are really the futurists of HR. So again, thank you. And for everyone watching, please remember these predictions. And if you see them in public or an event, HR Tech, RecFest, whatever the case, try to hold them accountable. On that note, that's our show. That's our 2025 prediction show on the Purple Acorn Network.
Thanks, Serge.
Thank you.